Topic 1. The only congressional hearing against the 9 kings and queens of United States Supreme Court.
Welcome to the universal episode of Truth Matters. This television program I started around 2003 with Mr. Mendel Adams, the senior pastor of St. Peter's Church in the Midwest in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mr. Mendel Adams was also a member of the Indiana State Congress. Truth Matters today is being recorded at the University of Cheikh Anta Diop in Dakar, Senegal. First and foremost, I would like to thank my assistant, Mr. Augustin Palouk from Togo, an engineer who's doing his research in Senegal, and my assistant, Mr. Amar Gage Jr. The topic that we want to discuss in this part is the question, do we have justices or do we have kings in the Supreme Courts of the United States? As a United States citizen, as a member of the American Bar Association, and a U.S. taxpayers for decades in the United States, since 1986, I, as a U.S. citizen, have been paying taxes. I have written so many writs of certs, that's petitions, to have a hearing in the United States Supreme Court. None of my hearings, none of my appeals, none of my petitions has been granted a hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court. So the question here today is, do we have justices or do we have kings and queens in the U.S. Supreme Court? I have written many writs of certs. One of them, Amar Gage against the Palm Beach County. The other one, Amar Gage against the U.S. Postal Services. Just to name a few. But the question is why the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court are not held accountable for any error or any mishandling of court hearings or any misjudgment or any error in any type, any error of any type or form in the U.S. Supreme Court. So, as a U.S. citizen, I've done many writs of certs. One of them, Amar Gage against the Palm Beach County. The other one, Amar Gage against the U.S. Postal Services. Just to name a few. But the question is why the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court are not held accountable for any error or any mishandling of court hearings or any misjudgment or any error in any type, any error of any type or form in the U.S. Supreme Court. So, as a U.S. citizen, I would like to request a nationally televised congressional hearing against the 9 kings and queens of the U.S. Supreme Court to review my cases. This thing cannot go unexposed because there is lots of prejudices in the United States. There is lots of racism. I'm not saying that the judges or the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court are racist or biased or prejudiced, but the question is, how come they can hear multiple cases of Donald Trump, the President of the United States, or multiple cases of a billionaire, but never, not one single case that I wrote has been granted the hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court. So, for this episode, I, as a U.S. citizen, I am requesting a nationally televised congressional hearing against all the 9 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court.